Hi, Jonathan York from Bay Financial Partners, looking at investment markets. Certainly a pretty interesting week last week. You saw the Fed meeting coming out, and while they sort of left rates unchanged, still looking for sort of 2 rate hikes towards the end of the year. That'll just be pretty interesting to see how that sort of pans out. They did say it's data dependent, and then coming out of the weekend, New Zealand time, you saw another pretty strong employment report from the US. Coming in above expectations, just over 200,000 jobs created again. So that really does put a little bit of pressure on the Fed and the US economy in terms of it's pretty much running at full employment. But what was more interesting within that report was a little bit of wage growth coming through as well, and that's obviously going to be pretty important to see sort of inflation creeping back into these economies. Certainly the central bank has spent quite a bit of time sort of trying to crush inflation over the last sort of 2 to 3 years, but really you need to see that inflation coming back to keep growth going, and that will then obviously see some of this quantitative easing removed from the system. It's been quite interesting, up to the sort of Fed meeting, what was even some sort of economists talking about increasing the inflation target that the Fed had to monitor, moving it up to 4%. That's really a pretty drastic move, and I think something like that really would be pretty much way out there in left field. Also, as well, obviously earnings season coming through. Some pretty interesting set of results going through. Obviously, a lot of eyes were on Apple. They were possibly a little bit disappointing in terms of their results. Obviously, sort of big news for Apple this year will be the 10th anniversary of the iPhone. That is expected just to see the company sort of push on again. Although the shares, are sort of trading up towards sort of record highs. But it's just interesting looking at the numbers with Apple. They have over 250 billion US dollars in cash. That is more than the New Zealand economy produces in a whole year. They've got about 147 billion sitting in corporate debt. Again, they are just huge numbers, and it's just going to be interesting to see how this sort of plays out, especially if you're talking about this potential repatriation tax with money being brought back into the US under the Trump presidency and only paying a fraction of the tax they supposedly would have to pay. Potentially, again, that could be about $1 trillion coming to the US economy. Obviously, the other big news over the weekend was the French election with Macron winning quite comfortably in the end. I think very few people expected Le Pen and the far right to sort of really improve much above the sort of 34-35% in their pollings, and in reality that's exactly what happened. Le Pen came in at 34%. Macron got a comfortable victory. It was obviously very pro-European, supposedly pro-France, and it will just be interesting to now see how that sort of pans out. Certainly the euro took quite a bit of a boost from it. Other big sort of faller over the last sort of couple of weeks has been oil. That's currently trading down around sort of $46 a barrel, and it's just going to be interesting to see how that sort of transpires over the next sort of 2 to 3 months. Again, a lot of talk, OPEC talking about sort of, production cuts, etc. They don't seem to be working. Currently, there's just an oversupply, and again, possibly OPEC has sort of underestimated the amount of oil that's sort of sitting on tap that can just be flicked on in the US shale oil. Here in New Zealand, interesting week as well. Reserve Bank meets this week. Again, they're sort of facing a similar sort of issue to the Fed, where they've been sort of trying to keep inflation under a relatively sort of tight rein, and it really has been very benign and very low. But now all of a sudden it's started to spike back, and it's pushing up against that sort of 2% barrier. It's going to be interesting to see really now how the Reserve Bank can sort of keep it at those levels. They come out and sort of said that rates won't be changing until sort of end of 2018, maybe early 2019. Certainly, if inflation stays at 2% and starts pushing above there for a continued period of time, it's going to be very interesting to see how they can sustain those policies when really they should be looking at moving interest rates up from these sort of artificial lows. So while we're not expecting any change from rates this week for the Reserve Bank, it'll just be interesting to see the commentary that comes out and just see if there's any sort of little tweaking there in terms of policy going forward. Vector have a capital bond in the marketplace. If you're interested in that, call us on 0800 867 323. As always, if you're looking for income, there are plenty of options out there that's worthwhile exploring. And if you just wish to have a little chat and see what's available, call us on 0800 867 323 or go to the website www.bayfinancialpartners.co.nz. Also, as well, it's worthwhile just checking those KiwiSaver balances, making sure you've got enough to get maximum tax credits. If you're unsure on what those numbers are, give us a call on 0800 867 323 or go to the website www.bayfinancialpartners.co.nz for lots of interesting articles. And we'll look forward to speaking to you soon.